Hi, everyone. Dr. Leah here. Welcome to another episode of Vet It Out. Today's guest is Dr. Charlotte Grasson, a dear friend and small animal practitioner. And since I'm a hospice vet and have a pretty niche practice, I actually don't take care and provide the veterinary requirements for my own animals because I don't have a hospital, I don't have diagnostic capabilities or treatment. So I have to actually bring my animals to my dear friend here. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Tell the folks a little bit about your background in vet med.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I feel special.
You are
So,
special.
I've been in vet med for about 20 years. I got my undergrad degree in veterinary technology from Quinnipiac. I got that in 2002. Wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go to veterinary school, so worked in a clinic full time as a technician and then decided to apply to veterinary school in 2006. So I had a 4-year break. And then I graduated in 2010 and have been working as a small animal practitioner since then.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
I mean, so this was not a decision that you took lightly. Like you had a long path to decide that you wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yeah, absolutely. And my first spot in the clinic was as a receptionist. And I think, as everybody knows, that is the hardest place to be.
That is the worst
Yeah,
job in
yeah.
any veterinary hospital is the poor person who's at the front desk kind of bearing the brunt of everybody's frustration and anger.
Absolutely. And I hope that having that position before makes me be a little bit more kinder to our receptionist. So I've kind of worked all throughout the hospital and ended up going to veterinary school. And here we are after 20 years.
And you had a really unique veterinary school experience. Tell everybody where you went.
I went to Atlantic Veterinary College in Prince Edward Island, Canada. So it's the only school that I applied to. It's the only school I really wanted to go to. I wanted to be able to make sure I could drive in case there's an emergency or anything. It was like 13 hours away. On beautiful Prince Edward Island, which was absolutely amazing. And being in Canada, I feel like people were just so friendly and so helpful, and I really loved it. I wanted to stay there after graduation, but unfortunately, student loans came into play and I had to come back.
Yeah.
So that was tough, but yeah, I loved it.
That's excellent. And what made you choose Connecticut?
To come back to, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, frankly, I was broke. So
I think a lot of people who pursue an education as grueling and expensive as we have.
So I wanted to do a lot of
relate with
different
that.
things, but at the age of 30, graduating veterinary school, I was living off of student loans 100%, did not have really any money left, and I had to move back in with my parents temporarily. So I had probably a couple $100 left when I moved back home. And as opposed to doing anything responsible with it, I put myself on a summer music tour. So I took my
YOLO.
father to see Neil Young. I also saw the Wailers, and I spent all my money. I got home in May, and I didn't start my job until July. And I decided that I was just going to live it up before I started practicing.
I love
So,
that for you.
Yeah. So as soon as I started practicing, my first paycheck I'd gotten in years, and I was running on empty at that point, but no regrets.
One of the things that we bonded over and our personal friendship was our love of music.
Yeah.
You were one of my favorite people to go catch live music with.
Yes.
Now, since you are a small animal practitioner, you see people who get animals that may not be prepared for what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And do you ever have clients who are proactive and reach out to you for advice before they actually have an animal in their possession, or is it
So,
usually after the fact?
I would say that's the exception to the rule. And what I think is really important, the people who have reached out to me before, I have a good relationship with. I've been through a lot with their and their previous pets, and they say, hey, what do you think about this breed or this adoption center, etc. And I think the first thing that you have to think about is energy levels.
Yeah.
Are you a big hiker where you're going to take this dog hiking all the time? Are you more of a couch potato? Do you like the snow? Do you like the warm weather? If you really like warm weather and you're a couch potato, maybe the husky isn't for you. So I really love when people call me and I can give them tips such as, okay, you want a puppy? Are you prepared that this is going to need to go out every couple of hours? If this is winter, that could be a little bit difficult. I have had some seniors get puppies and they've had trouble with house training, and they mean well, but they say, oh, we're going to have to go up and down the stairs like 5 times. And I said, yeah, unfortunately, you are. So I think the first step before you're getting any kind of a dog, whether puppy, etc., know what you're getting into as far as energy. And if you're having trouble with that, call your vet, call the technician that you know, and just talk through it, because we've seen all sorts of breeds and how things can go very inappropriately.
I love the example of of using a husky.
Yeah.
And it brings to mind a client that I had who they had the sweetest, most like couch potato of a bulldog ever. And then they went to a pet store and they saw this adorable little blue-eyed husky puppy. And this dog was insane. And they were used to the energy levels of a bulldog.
Yeah, totally
Like-
different. Walks around for 5 minutes a day and snores and farts the rest.
Yeah. And then this husky developed a lot of behavioral problems because they weren't able to exercise the dogs together.
Yeah.
The husky needed to go out and run, and the bulldog needed to be practically like hauled around in
Yeah.
a radio flyer wagon because it could
Yeah.
barely move after it walked.
You know,
half
kind
a
of like
mile.
George, my Shih Tzu, in a stroller.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
we-
shame.
We go on vacations together, and the first year that we went, Dr. Charlotte's dog, George, was like, we don't do wind, we don't do rough shells.
We
on
have
the
to have
sand.
very soft
It can't
sand.
it can't be raining, so he got put in a backpack.
Yeah, and it's great, but
Yeah.
just prepare for your backpack dogs. And another thing I think needs to be really driven home is if you're buying a dog from a pet store, you are supporting a puppy mill.
Yes.
Responsible breeders do not give their dogs to pet stores. You don't know what you're getting, and everybody wants that really cute puppy that they see
Yeah.
and says, oh my God, I want to bring that home. But if we all stopped doing that, there would be no more puppy mills.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's tough too.
And a good point on that is, a lot of people reach out to me and they tell me about this animal that they got, and they're like, oh, they have AKC papers. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't
So what does
mean
that even
anything.
mean? It's nothing.
There's no inspections happening at the
Right.
breeders' facilities or at a potential puppy mill whatsoever. All you have to do to get AKC paperwork is prove that both the mother and the father were AKC certified.
Right.
That's it. And then you pay a fee.
And they could be the biggest genetic disaster. You could have a
Exactly.
backyard breeder that sets that up. It really, it means nothing.
It means absolutely nothing. I can't stress that enough. AKC paperwork is not a comfort measure for you to feel like you made a good purchase.
Yeah.
Do not rely on that.
No.
And so thank you for bringing that up. And the problem is people don't really know how to vet a good breeder, or
Yeah.
even now we're dealing with rescue organizations where they're basically just running the puppy mill puppies that couldn't get sold.
Right. And, at this point where there's so many unwanted puppies and dogs and everything, you just really have to be careful where you're getting your dog from and what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I see that I would have to say is pretty frustrating, and I know people mean well, but seniors getting large breed dogs.
Yes.
If you're 80 years old and you are getting a golden retriever puppy, you're assuming that you're going to live to 95 and going to be able to walk that dog without getting hurt.
Yeah.
And that's just not practical. I'm 45 years old. Honestly, I don't want to be walking a large breed puppy, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work, and you always have to be prepared. If you're older, what are you going to do with this dog if something happens to you or you go into a home? It's really not fair for those dogs to be dropped off at rescue facilities, etc. And that's what happens a lot. The family doesn't want to take them. You now have a 9-year-old dog in the pound in some sort of rescue facility, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know why it's there. So also, if you're getting a dog, I really think you need to plan for, okay, if the worst case situation happens, what am I going to do with my pet?
Yeah. So kind of talking again about before you even bring an animal into your household,
Yeah.
you have to have plan B's and C's. If something happens to you in your life,
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks my heart as a hospice veterinarian anytime I help a senior citizen with their last pet.
Yeah.
And so many of them say, well, I think I'm too old to get an animal. And I don't agree with that.
No.
Because I could get killed leaving their house in a car accident on the ride home.
Correct.
And then I have 3 cats, 2 dogs, and a donkey to rehome. So nobody who has animals should be left in a position where if something happens to you, you do not have any plan in place. I'm a big fan of people including their animals in a will,
Yeah.
and considering setting up trusts. Now, financially planning, and then also disaster planning, making sure. So again, whether you're old or young, if you have an animal, you need to make sure that somebody is able to step in. And if they can't take on your animal, that they at least could help be responsible for rehoming it. So I've had some clients try to leave their pets to me, and I'm like,
Guilty. I actually took one.
yeah.
I took a German Shepherd,
Yeah.
and Dr. Leah, if you know me and the type of dogs I have, could you imagine me with a German Shepherd?
No, I
So,
have the visual already.
yeah, and I was left this dog in a will, which I felt so absolutely thankful for. I had to rehome her. I rehomed her to a family that has had multiple shepherds. They love shepherds, and she came with money. That owner had prepared. She was a elderly woman. She was very spry, in great shape. She went through Canine Good Citizen, all the other things for this dog. This was a great dog, and she went into heart failure, the owner, and passed away. And she trusted me with her dog, and I was able to find her a great home. But that's an example of proper planning.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's not just for an end of life situation. I mean,
Emergencies happen.
exactly. Like I've had a couple of surgeries recently, and I was unable to walk my own
Yeah.
dog. So I have a list of people, as I'm sure you do, that if something happens to you, there's somebody who can step in, go to your home, know how to feed them, know how to care for them properly. I've got my neighbor who is just, I don't know what I would do without her, because I have an epileptic cat that needs to be medicated every 8 hours. I couldn't have a life if
That's
I
a
didn't
lot.
have somebody
That's
who
a
can
lot
show
for
up.
anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have somebody who can show up and pill my cat, I would I would never leave this place. I would
Yeah.
just be rotting in
And
the
I
dame den all
also
the
think
time.
what a great idea is having your veterinarian have that information on hand.
Yes.
Where I practice, we have a second party release form. So if you're away and someone else has to take care of your pets or something happens to you, that person has authorization to advocate on your pet's behalf.
Yeah. So we've established you need to make sure first and foremost that you can find a veterinarian if you're going to be getting a new animal. And this goes for, even if you've had them before, because now more than ever with the veterinary shortage, I mean, I remember we would take on new clients almost every day when I was doing general practice.
It was easy to get an appointment
Easy,
that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And for stuff that was non-urgent. And now it's difficult to even find a practice that's accepting new clients, which is really scary. So there's too many people, especially during the pandemic, who are like, oh, we got all this time on our hands. We're at home now. Let's get a puppy. Let's get a kitten. And they assumed that it would be easy to find in veterinary care, and they couldn't. And then so what was happening is people were going to emergency clinics for vaccines, because it's so important to stay on an appropriate schedule, and things like heartworm prevention and flea and tick prevention. And they were flooding the ERs with non-urgent cases. And then there was less resources available for people who had true emergencies. And so trying not to put that cart before the horse is super important, and make sure you even get a vet.
Yeah, and that's where having a good relationship with a veterinarian comes into play. Hey, are you accepting new clients? Can I come in? Are you going to be available? That's also very important. And we're lucky where we are, where veterinarians are very close. If you're in rural New Hampshire or Vermont, you may have to drive several hours to find a veterinarian.
Yeah, veterinary deserts are legit.
Yeah, and one of my friends who was a technician, she actually went around, she moved to Vermont, and she went around interviewing other vets like, hey, are you going to accept a new patient? And some of these places weren't.
Yeah.
So she really had to think about that before getting a puppy. And then you didn't get the you didn't get the luxury of speaking to clients during COVID through the phone. Versus
I don't miss general practice at all.
Versus being in the clinic, seeing people. We did everything through the phone.
Yeah.
And appointments took so much longer during COVID because we were having to go out to the car and pick animals up and all of that. And I think one of the most frustrating things, as a side note from that whole experience is all the people that ended up having jobs working from home or were out of work for that time period, they got puppies because, hey, this is great. I have all this extra time. What am I going to do with it? I always wanted a puppy. Great. So you get a puppy and then you are home all day long with the puppy. The puppy gets very bonded to you, ends up with separation anxiety. These people never thought, what am I going to do when I go back to work?
Yeah.
And right now, several years after, we're seeing the consequences of that, which is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So that has helped me when I do my puppy talks to say how you want this dog to be is, what your lifestyle is going to be going forward. If you're going to be traveling a lot or being away from the dog, then if you're working at home right now, that puppy adult dog should be able to go in another room by itself and be comfortable.
Yeah.
They need to learn to be comfortable. And when dogs get really bad separation anxiety, they will chew through doors, they will ruin sheetrock, and that's a disaster for everybody.
Yeah, and not to mention if they consume anything that they're eating, and then you have an emergency obstruction surgery.
Yeah, and
expensive.
Yes. And on that note, and for the general public here, and I always incorporate this into my puppy visit as well, your starting estimate is going to be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 at an ER if your dog ate something and needs abdominal surgery.
On an urgent basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not prepared for this number. They have no idea. And what are you going to do if that happens to you?
Yeah.
What is your plan? And that's something that's one of the most important things to consider. If things don't go right, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get that money from?
Yeah.
Do you have a credit card? Do you have a savings? Do you have a family member? And you cannot make it someone else's problem to go into the clinic and say, oh, I don't have any money. Fix my dog.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these are not the days of the early 1900s and even 50s, et cetera, where going to veterinary school.
1900s.
Yeah, where from going to, when going to veterinary school was not that costly. People didn't have loans.
The cost of having a practice wasn't as expensive.
So you can't assume that your veterinarian is going to be able to perform an emergency surgery. You have to be prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think is very important is even some of these services that will give you a loan, sometimes the length of that loan is only a
6
year
months.
or 6 months.
Yeah.
If you have a $10,000 surgery and you have to make a monthly payment on that for a year, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
So that's where these days pet insurance is coming in.
Yep.
And there are many different types of brands of insurance you can get. And
just like human policies.
Exactly.
Major medical versus stuff that's covering, general care.
Exactly. And what the biggest thing is just like a lot of human medicine, it does not cover pre-existing conditions. So things that are very frustrating, such as allergies, a dog that has a lot of intestinal issues, I will see people say, oh, I'm going to apply for insurance now. And I said,
It's too late.
You missed that boat. You absolutely missed that boat. Well, the story I want to tell you that was really upsetting, and you wouldn't think of this brand new puppy, somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks old. This puppy went outside with his housemate to play and came back limping.
No.
She fractured her elbow. And this was not something that a general practitioner really could handle. It needed special orthopedic surgery. I don't do special orthopedic surgery. I could have amputated the dog's leg so it did not have pain, which is not the most difficult thing to do, but this poor pup needed some orthopedic surgery. So this really nice owner went to the emergency clinic, and the starting estimate, I think, was like $6,000 to $8,000. And she called me in the parking lot crying, To call your veterinarian crying and saying, I don't have this money. What am I going to do? Do you know someplace that does it cheaper? Why would you think that your puppy so young was going to break its leg? That doesn't come to people's mind, but it happens, and that's what you have to prepare for.
Yeah.
Luckily, she was able to work something out, and the puppy got the care that it needed, but she was devastated.
Yeah. And then you bring up the point.
Yeah.
She called you crying, and then you're carrying the weight of that
Oh,
burden.
yeah. And I'm calling all the vets I can think of around to get an estimate in the middle of my appointments.
Yeah.
So,
Because you're heartbroken too,
yeah.
and sick to your stomach over it. And
yeah.
that's what's Charlotte and I started our relationship based on the fact that we both were kind of in a position of experiencing a little bit of burnout. And this is a really great example as to why. And this is what we're facing every single day. People that are good pet parents who do a great job by their animals that are completely slapped in the face with a crisis that they weren't prepared for. And it's hard not to feel like we're responsible because we didn't prepare them properly
Right.
and tell them like, oh, like this could happen. Like think of all the horrible things that can happen to your human child. It's no different. And as you were describing these estimates, $6, $8, sometimes $10,000, people are really angry at us over those costs. It used to be more like 2, 3, 4,000 when we started, but the cost of everything has gone up exponentially. And everybody's allowed to be upset about it and frustrated that just being a human in this day and age is we almost can't afford it.
Right. And I also think people need to realize when you're getting mad at that person at the vet's office, the employee, whether it be the veterinarian, the tech,
The receptionist, the
yeah,
poor receptionist.
those are not the people that are, have to give permission for payment plans, etc. None of us are the ones that control that typically.
Whatsoever. You are
Yeah.
not setting the costs.
Yeah. So getting upset with us, and when I think back about it, I'm like, if you had insurance, we could do whatever this dog needed and you wouldn't be sitting here crying.
Yeah.
And some of these problems that these animals have, time is of the essence.
Yeah.
We cannot wait 48 hours for you to get finances together.
Yeah.
And we don't want to seem money grubbing or anything like that as veterinarians, but I always tell people there's no magical group that's going to fund us when people don't pay bills.
Yeah,
There's
angel
not
funds is what
Yeah,
people are usually
there-
looking for every day. How many
Yeah.
people would be seeking an angel fund? It's
There
not
is-
possible.
Exactly, and there's not a special group that's going to pay my almost $500,000 worth of student loans.
Yeah.
So people really need to start being responsible so they can enjoy their puppy
Yeah.
and be stress-free if an emergency happens.
Yeah. And, I learned a long time ago when I first started in this profession, like 25 years ago, that you cannot judge a book by its cover. And there's been a lot of talk lately about whether or not having a pet is a luxury. Meaning, should everybody be allowed to have a pet? And we're factoring in at that point finances, maybe some cultural differences, socioeconomic. But this was an interesting topic of conversation at one of my last conferences that I went to. And there were definitely some vets in the room who were like, yeah, absolutely. You should not have a pet if you can't afford it. And then I was like,
just
wait
think
a
that's
minute.
a bad thing to say for
Yeah.
veterinarians.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, you know what? I remember somebody coming in, dressed to the nines, latest iPhone, hair, nails, makeup. Like the dog was wearing a Coach collar. And that woman had a treatable condition that was going to be expensive. And then she looked me in the face and said, I can't afford this, scooped her dog off the table and stormed out. I don't know what happened to that dog, but its nails were overgrown. Its coat was matted. And then I was like, how is this woman snuggling with this dog, first of all, because he kind of like a little funky. And then shortly thereafter, a couple days later, I had this guy show up and you can just tell like he rolled out of bed, messy hair, sweatpants. And he had this like sweet, sweet pit bull mix. And he came in and that dog needed to have knee surgery. She blew her ACL, which cruciate ligament.
I see multiple times a
Yeah,
week.
yeah. I'm sure anybody knows anybody with dogs. You can probably find somebody whose dog had knee surgery. And if you looked at this guy, you're like, there's no way he's gonna be able to afford this, or he's gonna want to pay for it. And he was like, whatever it takes, save this animal, do what you got to do. And he figured it out. And I do absolutely go into people's homes who are like, I can't afford vet care. I can't afford vet care. And I went into somebody's home whose dog was being euthanized probably a year earlier than it needed to be, just because they didn't keep up with regular care. The dog's teeth were rotten. It developed heart disease secondary to that. And when I went into their homes, again, this woman, it didn't look like they were filthy rich by any stretch of the imagination, but they were telling me what they were feeding this dog. And they were literally buying filet mignon and smoked salmon. And they had bark boxes everywhere. All these treats, dog toys, beds.
Which
So
could have
rather
gone
than,
into veterinary care.
correct, rather than prioritizing the veterinary care for that animal, they prioritized a bunch of stuff that in the long run did nothing to prolong the animal's life. If anything, maybe shortened it. So priorities matter. And I definitely have people who call me up because I just do end of life, and they're looking for in-home euthanasia. That I do believe can be justified as a luxury service, but having that pet, I don't think we should be calling that a luxury. Whether or not you should even have them.
Well, that's a really tough thing. When I grew up, we did not grow up with lots of money.
Yeah.
Our animals did not go to the vet. The cats were indoor, outdoor. They never got euthanized. They disappeared.
Yep.
And I always keep this in the back of my mind, and it's very important, even for all of us professionals, to understand just because you cannot provide for your pet doesn't mean you don't love it.
Correct.
And I still think people should get pets. They might not be able to afford gold standard treatment, but they need to understand that.
Yes.
It is not our problem when you show up and we cannot provide a service to you. Let it be within reason.
Yes.
And I think every veterinarian should want to work with their client and say, hey, what are we looking for here?
Yeah.
But if you did not plan, it's not our fault.
Correct.
So that's another tough thing that happens. And when people say to me, they always say it, and I'm sure they say it to you all the time, given what you're doing. Anytime I'm putting an animal to sleep, I don't know how you do this every day. This must be the hardest part of your job. And a really great client said this to me the other day. And she had 2 dogs that lived to be 15, 16 years old. Wonderful lives. They were getting put to sleep because of old age.
Yeah.
And I said, no, this part isn't hard. Look at these full lives they've lived. And we have the power to give them a peaceful death.
Yeah.
I mean, we could
good
all
death.
wish for that. Yeah. Where it comes into play, where things I believe are the most difficult, is you're faced with a terrible decision with an animal that needs care, where
Critical
it can be
care.
fixed, such as a foreign body,
Which
meaning
is,
it
they ate something that couldn't pass through their intestinal
that
tract,
needs
a blockage.
surgery, which is fatal if untreated, or somebody that can't let go. And this animal has not been eating for 4 days. This animal is struggling. When they can't let them go, that's what really breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be compassionate and,
Yeah.
and let people know what you're seeing and what really should be done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody has a right to have a pet that's going to be responsible about it. And that's what this whole episode is about, is there's people who, sometimes we're a little bit impulsive as human beings. And I had said in one of my earlier episodes, it is a choice to have an animal. Nobody goes and gets kind of knocked up with a puppy that they have to now provide for, make some hard decisions.
I'm going to disagree with you, because if you're me on a Thursday night after my martini, I might apply for
You're on Pet Finder, but
Shih Tzus that are broken down.
But you're a responsible pet parent. You're going to make sure they're well cared for, but it's really frustrating. I always say the reason why animal neglect and cruelty, I mean, it infuriates me. It should infuriate anybody who loves animals. But like I said, it's not like you are just automatically stuck with this animal, which happens with humans and human children. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm in this position. Yeah, if you've got that kitten who you found via the cat distribution system, you didn't have to keep it.
Right.
But if you do, you should get it spayed and neutered. It should at least have a rabies vaccine.
And
you have to make sure it doesn't have parasites.
by law in Connecticut, if you are feeding a stray cat, you've made that your responsibility.
That is
or
interesting.
you could be like me and accidentally spay and neuter your neighbor's cats when you think they're strays.
Yeah.
And also my neighbor whose cat I've been feeding thinking it was a stray.
Is this Jerry?
Yeah, he happened to get some free vaccines and some flea and tick prevention because, I thought he was a stray.
He showed up at the right garage.
Yep, doing my due diligence there and taking care of him, absolutely. But yeah, and what I find also as a small animal practitioner and for the small amount of time you were doing small animal, I bet you remember this. The person comes in with this dog. They spent $6,000 at the pet store, and then they can't afford to do basic care. So I've had this happen, and I'm known to get a little bit testy with some clients.
A little tough lovey.
Yeah, a little tough lovey. And I said, how did you pay for this dog at the pet store if you can't do this right now? Oh, they gave me a payment plan. Please do not get an animal if you have to go on a payment plan.
Please.
That's just setting up for disaster.
Yeah.
On everybody's end.
Yeah. And it also kind of sets its precedence that you think you're going to be able to do a payment plan for all your vet care too,
Yeah.
which when I first started practicing, there was a small practice that had an accounts receivable of over $35,000.
Oh, yeah, because all of us want to do this for free.
Yeah.
We just can't.
That was $35,000 of people showing up with a sick and injured, usually critical animal, begging, pleading, I will do anything, doc. Please, please, please save my animal. I promise I'll pay. $35,000 as an annual salary for somebody at a small animal clinic, or it used to be. With the
Yeah.
cost of living, you're going to be in poverty,
Right.
unfortunately. But this is the reality of it. And it's just like, I've had people who call me up, and because of my practice doing home hospice, they're usually cold calls. I don't know these people. I have no established relationship with them, unless it's somebody who you're referring to me and you can vouch for them, for example. And people ask, like, well, do you take payment plans? And I'm like, I do not know you at all. You can go to a hospital, and it should be a little bit more affordable than having a doctor travel to you. If you don't know one person in your life that trusts you to loan you some money, whether that's a friend, a family member, a coworker, then why are you expecting a complete stranger to be a bank for you and give you a loan?
And why is that appropriate?
Yeah, I'll take a credit card from your uncle in Japan over the phone right now to cover the cost of my service, and I'll head your way.
Well, you know
but
what
why
kind
are
of
you
business
asking me to carry that burden?
You
And
know what-
everybody expects hospitals to do that.
Right. And you know what kind of business you would have if you did that?
I broke one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Yeah.
a business. We're not in this for the money, but we have to make money because we're buried in debt. Between
Right.
the two of us, we easily have over $500,000
Oh,
of
yeah.
student loan
Oh,
debt.
no, I have like $500,000 myself. Yeah.
All right, so we're about $750,000
Yeah.
between the two of
That
us
could
at
be-
6.8% interest.
Yeah. And how many miles does your car have on it?
Over 200,000.
Yeah. Mine's about 120, 2013. We're obviously
Yeah.
very rich veterinarians.
Yeah, for all you people who are like, oh, they're laughing all the way at the bank after they,
No.
they take all the money to save our animals. No, we are struggling to get by. A lot of vets and especially the support staff are literally living paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
And we've seen a lot of private equity come into veterinary medicine. And again, I can't stress this enough. Vets are not setting the pricing. It's the people that are so far removed from what's going on in the day-to-day care of an animal in a hospital that are making these decisions.
Unless you own that practice,
Yes,
which is coming
which is
few
really
and
rare.
far between. Let me backtrack for a minute when you were talking about extending credit to
Mhm.
people. So one story I often tell that was so frustrating to me, this was early on when I started practicing, and a non-client walked in, had never brought their pet to us. It was a small dog, got hit by a car, had a broken leg. So I stayed late with the veterinarian at the time to help repair this leg. We were there late taking care of this dog. She wrote a check several days after, stopped payment on the check. Even if you
I've
wrote...
had someone write me a check they knew wasn't going to be good.
Right. But even if you said, I'm so sorry, I cannot afford this, I appreciate you so much, here's brownies, that would have made the blow a little bit softer.
Rather than deception.
Yeah. Yeah.
You conned a vet is
Yeah.
what you did.
And we're putting our personal time on the line. I mean, we're not going to say, no, we're not going to do this because we care about these animals so much.
If we're forced to,
Yeah.
we go home and we cry ourselves to sleep.
In the car. It's in the car.
Before you even make it home
No,
sometimes.
yeah, exactly. In the
Yeah.
car on the way home.
It hurts.
And in a situation where I am, where I've been at the same place for 15 years, I'm seeing pets from puppies or kittens to having to let them go.
Yeah.
And you have this whole relationship with them, and it's wonderful. But there are those hard times where we don't have control of, but the pet owners could have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on a note for the plug for pet insurance, and no, we're not getting paid to say any of this.
I'm not giving a
No.
company name.
Yeah. And one of the scariest things I saw recently is a client had a puppy that broke into her purse and ate a bunch of Advil. Toxic dose.
Yeah, don't ever, ever, ever give your pets Advil, period. Ibuprofen,
Or
don't
aspirin.
do it.
Just don't
do it.
No.
Don't give anything like that over the counter to an animal without consulting your veterinarian, ever.
And why would she think that a dog was going to go into her purse and chew up the bottle? So this dog ended up with intestinal ulcerations, and went into kidney failure, and she went to a referral hospital, and you know what happened? She had insurance. So it was over $20,000 for this dog because it was a long time worth.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't have been, that puppy would have been dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also have to think of that in this day and age. If your pet is suffering and you cannot afford proper treatment, then it is okay to let them go peacefully.
You have to be prepared for that reality.
Yeah, and we don't want any animal to suffer.
Yeah.
You can't just take it home and hope it gets better.
Yeah, so we've talked about this before. One of my favorite things that I say now to clients, especially when they call me, they've identified that their pet is sick. Something is wrong. It's probably pretty bad since they're talking to a hospice veterinarian. And then they say, well, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you have to do something. If you're not ready to make the call to have me come and be proactive with euthanasia, then you need to take this animal to your regular veterinarian
Or the
for
ER.
palliative care measures. Yeah, or the ER, and make sure that you're doing anything and everything you can to keep them comfortable. But if your plan is to say, yep, my pet is really sick, and stick them in the corner and stare at them until they're so horrifically ill and suffering, and then you want to do something about it, you failed your pet.
I take that phrase from you when you
say doing nothing is wrong.
Yeah, and I use that now, and it's helped a lot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I tell a client, like, whatever you're gonna do, either get me on your schedule. You can always cancel or postpone. I love cancellations. I love cancellations way more than emergencies, and I tell all my clients that, and I make myself way too flexible and available because of it. But if you're just waiting for that other shoe to drop, and then you're putting the veterinary professionals in a position of trying to accommodate an emergency, which will be more expensive if you can find somebody who's available. But most importantly, you made your pet suffer to get to that point when you knew something was wrong. That is on you.
That's tough. And what's also very tough is sometimes owners don't know what suffering is or what their pet is going through.
They can't identify the signs like we can.
Right. And I think as a veterinarian, you often have to teach people what suffering looks like or just walk them through it to educate them.